friend asked me how I deal with greed, dissatisfaction, and the feeling of not being enough as a trader. Why are we humans so rarely truly satisfied? And why do we often have the feeling of not being or having enough, even though we are objectively doing well? And why do we always want more? More money, more recognition, more success. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. What primarily bothers us and makes us disgruntled is the fact that our wishes are not fulfilled, repeatedly getting us angry about this. However, this does nothing at all to help us realize these wishes after all, so that we neither come closer to our original goal nor regain our joy of life. This state of disorientation is very dangerous for a healthy mindset. We should never allow the happy mood of our mind to be disturbed or even destroyed. Whether we are suffering now or have suffered in the past, at no time should we have a reason to be unhappy. But everything is relative. Let's take the example of a job promotion. We have the right qualifications for it. So we are basically entitled to the promotion, and yet we don't get it. At first, we are outraged and think, but I deserve this promotion. Nevertheless, we can decide how to react. We can be angry and furious, but then we may realize how destructive such a state of mind can be. This conviction alone, this realization of negative emotions, will help us to be aware of these emotions and perhaps even reduce them a little bit. We should therefore stop wasting our thoughts on what we have not received. By doing so, we don't feed any further feelings of competition, envy, or jealousy. This only leads to us becoming even angrier, even more dissatisfied. But now it's about achieving a kind of peace of mind. And this is where we need to use our ability to think and analyze critically. So let's start by realizing that no situation is 100% good or bad. In particular, we should not think in black and white categories. Because in reality, everything is relative. With the help of this way of thinking, we can work towards a more comprehensive view of the situation and try to look at different aspects. We can realize that having a better job and more money does not necessarily mean that we no longer have problems. If we really look at people in higher positions, we discover that there are also more demands on them, more competition, and a lot of envy from others, and maybe that would have not been right for us in our current state of mind. So we continue to think about the current situation. We think, well, I'm just unlucky because I actually deserve a much better job. But now that we haven't got it, instead of just looking at this failure, we could cultivate a broader view and look at it from a different perspective. We should see the positive things in it. Maybe we weren't ready for it ourselves, and this rejection shows us this now as we get a deeper insight into our mind through this setback. However, this scenario is not only adapted to the job, it applies to any situation we can imagine where something has not worked out as planned. We have to pay special attention to our desire. Certain forms of desire are positive. Desire for happiness, for example, the desire for peace or a harmonious and friendly world. Some desires are very useful. But at a certain point, desire becomes unreasonable, which usually leads to difficulties. For example, I like to look at all the beautiful things while I go shopping. Then a feeling of desire arises in me. And my initial impulse might be, oh, I want this, I want that, I want that. But my second thought is, do I really need this? And the answer is usually, no, I don't. If we follow the first desire, then our wallets will soon be empty and our home will be full of things that we never actually use. In a remote sense, this makes us slave to our material things. There's also a really nice quote about this. The things we own end up owning us. So if we are constantly chasing our consumer desires, at some point we lose control, not only for our money, but also of our thoughts, values, and self-image. However, the desire for basic human needs, such as food, clothing, and shelter, is much more reasonable than just for material things. So Instead of wishing we had so much money that we could afford everything, we should rather wish to fulfill the needs of the body. If we neglect the basic needs of the body, we harm the countless organisms that live in our body. Similarly, if we live in great luxury, we should be careful not to develop emotions that cause suffering, such as attachment, pride, arrogance, greed. The essential thing is to control our inner factors. The external factors are neither good nor bad in themselves. It depends on us how we allow ourselves to be influenced by the external factors. And not allowing ourselves to be influenced requires a strong character. Self satisfaction alone cannot determine whether a desire or an action is positive or negative. If the desire for expensive things is based on insatiability, then you will eventually reach a limit and you get a reality check. And once you have reached the limit, you will lose all hope, fall into depression and so on. There is a danger inherent in this kind of craving. I strongly believe that this form of excessive desire leads to greed based on unrealistic expectations. And if we reflect on the excesses of greed, we will discover that it leads us into frustration, disappointment, and a fair amount of confusion and problems. Although greed arises from the desire to obtain something, it is characteristically not satisfied when you get what you want. This makes greed limitless and bottomless. This real remedy for greed is contentment. If we are satisfied, it does not matter whether we receive an object or not. We will still be satisfied at the end of the day. It doesn't matter what outcome we have. However, each of us is responsible for this themselves. Instead of working solely for the accumulation of wealth, we should do something more meaningful, something that sincerely and explicitly aims at the well-being of all humanity. If everyone thought this way, imagine what kind of world we would live in. Someone who knows what really serves his interest, who wants to live in harmony with himself, will not put so much emphasis on praise, fame, and honor from others. What is usually considered satisfaction in the world looks really trivial next to material things. Does pleasure last beyond death? I don't think so. Therefore, it is not worth getting into euphoria over success and letting failure plunge us into depression. However long we live, everyone will die at some point. This life will disintegrate. And it won't matter how much wealth and possession we had. In the end, all that matters to us are the experiences we had and the unique moments we have created for ourselves. At the end of our days, our death is indistinguishable from the death of an animal. What we often call pleasure or joy is in reality often just a subsiding of dissatisfaction. Think of food. When we are hungry, we enjoy the first meal intensively. But if good food were just pure pleasure, then the more we eat, the happier we should become. But the opposite happens. After a point, it becomes unpleasant. We feel heavy and tired. That shows this pleasure was not real happiness, but only the reduction of a previous lack, hunger. As soon as this lack is gone, the discomfort returns in a new way. Now, let's take a look at greed from the point of view of money. Money in itself is just a piece of paper. Only the value we ascribe to it socially makes it valuable. The paper itself is worth very little. Its true value lies in the price of the number written on the paper, and that's just absurd. If we chase money for money's sake, the problem is that it makes us victims of insatiable greed. We never have enough and we become slaves to money. We are never satisfied with anything. And when we get something, we always want more. Unless we learn to say, this is enough for me, we can never be truly satisfied. And don't forget, one way to achieve contentment, for example, is simply to realize how lucky you are to have a job. And imagine how many people have no chance of getting any kind of work. We can always say to ourselves that there are other good things in my life, and I'm still better off compared to many people. and it is my reality. Sometimes we forget it. We are spoiled and we ignore how lucky we are to be where we are right now. There's always someone worse off than us. There's a kind of subliminal assumption that money can solve our problems. The modern view of money is the following: money is what makes everyone happy and fulfills all dreams. But this view is dangerous. This view can easily describe the neglect of our inner values. One could also say that this way of thinking is a kind of consequence or side effect of the inability to recognize inner values such as compassion, tolerance, and human affection. Of course, money is not completely bad, and of course, it can solve some problems. But we should be aware that money is secondary and our personal character development should always be first. I myself am a trader, which means that I'm centrally involved in the global events of capitalism. In other words, I am closer to money than many others, and I still believe that money is never as important as personal development and your health. You can be really happy even if you don't have any money. If we believe that money equals happiness, then we will preoccupy ourselves with increasing wealth even if we are already rich. We chase this unattainable dream. We intensify our efforts. We strive for more. The richer we become, the more problems we are exposed to. So, the kind of happiness and freedom we were looking for, we have not achieved, but the opposite. We've become slaves to money. And that's why I see it this way. No matter how much money we earn, no matter how high our income is, we will always have the agonizing fear of not having enough. Because the more money we earn, the more lavish and expensive our lifestyle becomes, and our spending will increase accordingly. This boundless desire inevitably leads to a lack of satisfaction. Ask yourself, do you really need most things in your life? The answer will probably be no. This kind of desire is limitless and can never lead to satisfaction, only suffering. But how can we free ourselves from these feelings? We need to pay attention to our thoughts and should often question and reflect on the actions we take on a daily basis. We should also be grateful every day, simply grateful for things that are going well. We don't have to be perfect every day. We should also stop comparing ourselves to other people. Social media, envy, status are pure poison for our peace of mind. There is also a nice quote here. Comparison is the thief of joy. You are on your own path in life, and you simply must not compare yourself to anyone, because no one is like you and has ever had to walk the path that you are currently walking. Happiness, or being happy, is a spiritual art. We can't buy it, nor can machines like smartphones give it to us. Money and wealth are also subordinate sources of happiness, and not happiness itself. Happiness can only develop within ourselves. No one else can give us happiness. It has to come from ourselves in order to be truly happy. The decisive source of happiness is our inner calm and balance, or peace of mind. It doesn't depend on external factors either. The decisive factor for our happiness is inner self-confidence, and each of us has to work on ourselves every day to achieve this. I hope you guys have a lovely day, and I appreciate you guys listening to what I have to say. Feel free to write a comment and tell me your opinion on all of this. I like to read them all. I'm rooting for you all to improve yourself. See you later.